The name like business advisory board, how can they not be done?
Ready, it is 6:30. I think it is time to call the November meeting. The board session. Welcome all our guests. Looks like we have a little bit of a crowd. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Move we approve the agenda.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, raise your right hand. Both thing. Agenda is approved. Do we have anybody for open forum?
We do not.
All right. It's been a long time since we had anybody speak at open forum. I'm not going to say I missed that, but it's been a while. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, raise your right hand. Both the same. Can I get a motion to approve the regular open session minutes?
There's only, you had a suggestion for a change. Okay. Aaron, you were at the last meeting, right? Yeah. Mhm. Okay, get it off there. That's all. I was volleyball. I was thinking you were gone. My gosh. I meant to know you were there.
Do I have a motion or not? I wasn't paying that much.
I'll make a motion to
Okay.
approve the meeting minutes with the removal of Ms. Sassman from attendance.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Any other changes, correction? Discussion? All right, all in favor of approving the regular open session meeting minutes, raise your right hand. Close the same. Next up is approve the FFA WLC trip. Got the documentation on that. Is there anything you said about that or not?
It's the same Washington trip we do every year. Would you, either of you like to speak to that or?
It's just a trip. I kind of laid it out in the letter that I requested for the trip. It's a leadership conference. It's very intensive for an entire week that kids get to go and learn about personal leadership, group leadership, and then they can bring back that service learning project. And if they choose to go through with that, they are able to do that as well. And they get to see the nation's capital, so that's kind of nice.
What did it say you were gonna take? Was it 10 or 15?
10 max.
Okay, 10 max. All right. Can I get a motion to approve the FFA WLC trip?
I move to approve the FFA WLC trip for summer 2024.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, the same. All right, approval and transfer of payment of bills. Any questions or comments on that?
I just have one question. Why is the propane not split equally between elementary and high school?
I don't know. Necessarily.
What
I
do
know
you
it's
mean?
Trying to think.
Like most of the utilities are split equally between elementary and high school. For some reason, I noticed, because I think it was at the very first part of the billing. It showed both of it billed to high school, so I was curious.
Well, it would
because
depend.
Elementary's not on propane.
It would depend. Technically, like for instance, the propane out at the maintenance and our ag building is only high school. So it could be that we're only using high school. Typically, the propane that is behind the kitchen is split out 10-50 and 40-20. I don't know that that was a bill specific to the kitchen. My guess would be if it's only high school, it's probably our tank or tanks that are located at the high school facility.
That's all I have.
Anything?
Has the new propane service going okay?
Seems to be going great. I am curious. I don't think we've taken a poll at this point yet on how many of our staff have taken advantage of the employee pricing. But I do know, based on a couple of checks, even prior to kind of peak season, which will maintain that price. I think it was $1.43 all the way through winter. Doesn't matter. We were beating the best rates by like 7 or 10 cents locally. And that was in September, maybe beginning of October. So by the time December, January, February hits, we anticipate our folks to be in a pretty good spot in terms of the price.
Do we get some new gravel on the back road? Is that what I'm reading, the capital, or was that gravel going some, I assume it was gravel going somewhere else?
Let's see. Oh, gravel went to ball fields.
Ball
So we re-gravelled for the lots.
Before the softball game?
Yep.
Okay, very good. Anybody else? I think that was the only thing I was curious about as I went through. All right, can I get a motion to approve the transfer of payment of bills? Oh, or did I? No, I haven't asked that yet. We were discussing. Motion,
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer and payment of bills.
can I get a second?
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, the same. Reports. And I will mention, we have a lot of reports tonight and a lot of discussion items. Okay, that said, reports, middle school, high school.
Talk fast, right? So we've had a lot been going on at the high school this fall. So looking at procedures first, with our new food services, we're so excited that more students are eating in the cafeteria. Along with that, we've had an issue with more students are eating in the cafeteria. So we've had a lot of growing pains with getting the kids through the line a little quicker, and we've heard some complaints from parents. We've been working on that with adding some different ways to get the food to the kids, making sure the kids have signs out front so that they know what's for lunch, so they get it through quicker. But what they pretty much have now is a buffet for lunch. So we are working on that piece of it, and it's getting faster, and the kids are so excited about their lunches now. Truthfully, I am too, so it's a good thing. So for our October PD Day, we actually had our teachers go out to different schools and actually observe teachers in different districts. The reason we like to do that is there's things out there that we don't know about. So they went out, they gathered all kinds of new information, brought some cool stuff back for our kiddos here. But also the great thing is when you go see other teachers, you also can see, hey, I'm doing things right. In your classroom, sometimes you don't realize that you are doing things right until you see others doing it. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm a rock star at this, even though you doubt yourself. So it was really great to go out and see other districts and what they do. So I'm excited to do that again in the future. So in this report, I included because last time I presented all of our math data, I didn't have the state averages yet. So what I've included in your report today is the actual state averages. Now note that these are not final yet. So these are just the averages. The preliminaries is what they would be, but usually they don't vary too much. So whenever we look at that, out of 11 tested areas, our students in the middle school and high school beat the state average out of 8 of them. So only 3 did we not. So we're going to really focus on those next year. So we're really, really pleased with that data, really excited. And then I also included our first 2 rounds of our evaluate data in your board report as well. Remember what that is, it shows what they're going to look all year. So there are some items in those tests that they have not been taught yet. So when you look, oh my gosh, they're at a 32%. Well, that's because we're still only, about a quarter through the year. So that's okay, an average for now. But the good thing is we're seeing those scores go up. And that's what we want to see throughout the school year. And we have found out that this evaluate test and the math does correlate fairly well. So this will give us a good idea where our kiddos are going to be come math time. And then looking at our culture, our parent-teacher conferences went really well. Lots of parents came in. We had our all-conference choir was November 3rd at Fatima. We had, I think, 8 students that participated. They sounded great. It was a lot of fun. I also want to give some props to our National Honor Society. They did a great job with our Veterans Day. We were very pleased with that, as well as our band and choirs. They all sounded great. Then the day before Thanksgiving, we're going to have Carrie Portell come in and do a assembly for our students. I've actually seen her speak before. She speaks on drug, alcohol use, as well as driving under the influence. So we're really excited to have her come in. She does a great, really great speech there. Then also we'd like to welcome Adam Mawson next semester. He's going to be doing our social studies long-term sub for next semester. So we're going to change that up a little bit and get some new blood in here. So we're really excited about that. Is there any questions?
Thank you. Thank you. Good representatives to the board.
Good evening. I'd like to thank you all for including us in the packet of information that you have. about what students are doing at Lynn High School. We are Sophie Voss and Reed Baker, and we are happy to answer any questions to the best that we can that you may have. The activities that have happened in the first quarter so far. A few of the highlights are this week is FFA week. Both of us were able to drive a piece of farm equipment to school today. It was lots of fun. Tomorrow we are hoping to have some country stars in the building. And then our week will be wrapped up with barn warming on Friday, which will be lots of fun.
Our fall sports teams had great success this season, and we are excited to support them as a student body with send-off and going to games and each other's meets. We had some great things going on this last quarter, from art projects and Halloween to attending conventions and events to learn more about future careers and colleges. Thanks again for having us, and we are open to any questions you guys might have.
Any questions?
Anyone?
Thank you for having us.
Excellent, perfect length, well done. All right, maintenance.
I don't really have too much. I won't go too long here. I just, basic maintenance was shifting from outside back into inside now. Touch ups, I'm doing a lot of preventative maintenance, trying to go through and make sure nothing breaks down or and instead of actually doing reactive maintenance. So working on are keeping our preventative maintenance program going the way it has been. It seems like it's going to start working out to our favor. So worked on the lead water project a little bit, got all the outlets and water sources labeled and set up and all documented. So we're ready for that. We're just going to wait on a few bids and getting that going. And just holding it all together and fixing it in the brakes.
Yeah, any questions? Is the football field winterized sprinkler system? Or not yet?
That I don't know.
Wonder if we're working on that or I say
We
did Joe did it last, well, or did Mitch do it last year?
I don't know, it might have been. a
Probably a
team effort.
combination, Joey.
I'd be
I
happy.
do know that Mitch was concerned about making sure it gets done, so I don't know if it's been done yet or not.
Yeah, I remember last year we broke a valve or something
Yeah,
because we didn't get a winterized, right?
See, I mean, I'll look into it and see where we are
Yeah,
going.
probably should follow up.
I know we went over and winterized the bathrooms and softball field and everything like that. Stuff we had issues with here.
Check with Chris. I think they have a plan. It's not done yet, from what I understood.
Okay.
Chris wanted it done faster. Whoever does it said, no, we're not ready for it yet, so.
Other Joe.
So check with Chris to make sure.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know.
And it's not, I mean, we haven't winterized anything
Yeah.
of the golf course yet, I
Yeah.
don't think, so the ground's still warm.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Superintendent report.
No pressure. With you guys doing a great job. So continuing to focus on academic and competitive culture, not just with our kids, with our staff as well. Staffing wise, we're gonna recommend a couple folks for the kitchen today, and Mrs. Assman spoke to our long-term sub in social studies. We'll be looking for that to be posted officially and hopefully get some applicants, permanent applicants going through the spring. Still have a couple of coaches openings of particular importance. You'll notice that we'll have to ramp up our recruitment and retention efforts just across the board, from pay to our efforts in attending job fairs and recruitment fairs, just in general. And speaking with superintendents today across the kind of the center of the state, everybody's having that same issue. Professional development was good. I really like the idea that we're getting out, seeing best practices and bringing it back. Professional development will drive our calendar discussion through the spring. In general, we've done our best to do an audit of how well our Monday PD is working. We're not satisfied there. I've asked the team to come back with some creative thoughts about how we might rearrange those days. Professional development and MASA talked a lot about open enrollment, teacher-based salary grant, and some changes and adjustments to accreditation and accountability. Facilities, I'll defer to Cliff on that. We did work a little bit on this backfield, clearing it out to see what we might be able to do for parking there. We've got a few ideas. Some discussions we've had though, when we typically tend to overflow with parking, we always have some marked spaces open, sometimes more than others. Often it's about proximity to the event, not necessarily the opportunity for parking. So we're thinking through that. Athletics, you guys have the the athletic report from Mr. Minix, which essentially said we had a lot of great things go on through the fall. With cross country, we had 2 state runners. We had our softball team go to the Final Four, which was a fun thing to kind of participate in. Really like some of the, especially with the team, the culture of that team down early in the year and kind of battling back. Had a lot of good things go on through this fall. So a lot of honors in the conference district and state, not just in softball, but in cross country and our other sports as well. Budget and finance. This is one that you're going to hear me talk a lot about through this fall. Definitely earlier than last year when I hadn't done a budget or finance planning at all. Already looking at next year, the state of Missouri does have a great surplus. Typically, that's about 500 million. We're at the $6 billion mark. So it is likely that transportation will fully fund and our formula will fully fund. Now, that still has to go through appropriations, but the money is there. And I'm pretty optimistic. A few things that I want you guys to know. We have the intersection of quite a few things going on in the finance world right now. We have our state adequacy target. It's increasing, but it's changing. We have teacher-based salary grant, which is the single most likely bit of legislation to pass this year, which is great. I am 100% for increasing the minimum salary. Right now, that is a split 70-30 between states and the districts, which I anticipate they'll do in the coming years. But I also anticipate that match, that split is going to disappear, which will leave us on the hook. Just a brief look at our salary schedule, and just in our teachers, that'll be a $175,000 a year adjustment if we push our base up and decompress our salary schedule, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of 4% of our fund balance. That's a pretty big swing for a small school district. Which is why I wanted to introduce everybody to Mr. Joe Kinder. He's there in the back. Joe are you the managing director? You want to come up?
Yeah.
Managing
I
director.
don't know what that means, but that's the title they gave me. So.
It's fancy. He's managing director at Stiefel, and he's done a lot. We've done a lot of work together just to talk about what our bonding capacity is and our capacity to phase bond, meaning run a bond that maximizes our bonding capacity, repay that bond over time, and then put ourselves in a position to do a phase 2 or phase 3 project. With the intersection, I won't get too much into it because I do want you to have a couple of seconds of SAT, teacher-based supply, open enrollment coming our way. There will be a market adjustment for that base salary grant. The moment it becomes 38, that's only the best thing since sliced bread for a little while. And then all of our competitors adjust. And if they outspend us, 38 will be the new year 2 low. So just some things for us to think about with bonding and lease purchase. All that's going to intersect. And while I'm a math teacher and an educator, I'm not necessarily a finance specialist. So I defer to you, Joe. Just talk a little bit about what we've talked about and kind of lay out what your thoughts are.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Sorry, I was planning to get here early so that I could introduce myself before we were up in open session. So I apologize. We had a deal in the market today and we've got interesting markets. So we're trying to move some things around right now for other clients that have deals coming up. But I'm glad you could have me down. My name is Joe Kinder. I'm with a company called Stiefel. I've been doing this in this role for 17 years now. I've got both my parents are public educators. 99% of our clients are school district clients. We work with probably close to half of the school districts in the state of Missouri, several around here from Rolla, Jeff City, Southern Boone, Bourbon, Cuba. We've got people all over the state, but we've got a lot of clients down in this area. And what we do when the rubber meets the road, the way that you would pay us any money is when we go out and actually issue any sort of debt. If you're issuing general obligation bonds or something along those lines, then we take our 300 and something bond salesmen, what we call institutional bond salesmen, with access to over 400,000 investor accounts. We literally auction off your securities in $5,000 increments to those willing to pay the highest price, which for you all means the lowest yield. I came from a small firm. We still act like a small firm, but we are the #1 underwriter of K-12 bonds in the state and in the country. And we are the #1 underwriter overall in the country in terms of number of issues that go out the door from Stifel. So that's a little bit about us and our background. What we focus on though, I don't actually do any of that stuff. I work with school districts on just trying to take care of their overall financing picture, right? And so as Dr. James mentioned, we're in a position now where we've got a lot of different items in flux, and we're always trying to, as we look at your debt and as we analyze what your finances look like, we're trying to set you up in a position that allows you to do projects now, but is cognizant of the fact that this school district existed long before I was born. It'll exist long after I'm ash and dust in the ground, and you all will have to be taking care of your facilities that entire time, one way or another. So we want to make sure we're allowing you to keep track of your facilities, but we also know that you've got pressures coming from the state and coming from recruitment and retention issues that are going to potentially in the future mean that you're going to have to generate some additional capital to be able to operate the school. When I say that, just as a brief background, I'm sure some of this has been covered, but the state does have a lot of money sitting around. That is almost certainly a result of all the federal dollars that have flowed in, both to the state itself, to local municipalities, but to individuals during COVID that then spent that back. Now they'll tell you that's all single source payer funds, but the vast majority of that, as we know, the general fund is 70% funded by individual income tax. And most of those people that received those additional checks did pay their individual income tax. And so when we're 70% funded by individual income tax and we have billions of dollars flow in, that's where those surpluses sit. I say all that to say the legislature themselves has no ability to increase taxes. They cannot add revenue if they need to add revenue. They can only do that through a vote of the people in the state of Missouri. We're not like Kansas. Kansas can mess things up and then go right back and raise taxes and get revenues back to where they need to be. So if we hit a cliff, if we hit a funding cliff at the state level or a recession, when we're 70% reliant on individual income tax, we could see our state aid withheld, reduced, in some way restricted from you all. So you need to be in a position from a local revenue standpoint to be able to adapt and adjust and change. And so your levy, as we look at it, you've got your operating levy, you do all your work with that. We're focused more on your debt service levy, that $1.05 that you have sitting that you set every year through your Form C that can only be used to pay bricks and mortar debt. Now that $1.05, I wasn't here to do that. I'm new to you, but your $1.05 is a credit to you all, and it is designed for a very specific purpose. And so when we talk about having $1.05 levy as a general rule, it depends on interest rate and growth and other assumptions that we make, but that's going to allow you to go up to your state constitutional capacity every 5 to 7 years, depending on where rates are at and how your assessed value is growing. What does that mean? That means the state actually limits how much general obligation debt or how much debt you can actually have outstanding at any given time to 15% of your assessed value. There's some other things we can count in there, but that $1.05 is not designed to pay one single issue or your existing debt. That is designed, unless you tell us otherwise, to be able to go out and issue no tax rate increase bond issues on a regular basis to address your facilities. So that we would design a plan around that would allow you to continue to do those types of things, because we know, number one, you can't address all your facilities within that cap. That cap right now, we project in the $9 to $10 million range. There's, believe it or not, that's not a hard and fast number, and we actually have to build some cushion in. And if you want to get into the weeds on how we calculate bonding capacity, we can. But let's say you were going to put something on the ballot in 2024. Capacities or calendar year capacities, we would project that would be somewhere between $9 to $10 million. We're actually in the process of surveying centrally assessed rare and utility companies. That's a number that you don't get. Any fixed transmission line that runs through your district actually is not locally assessed. It's assessed at the state level and then doled out to you in the operations on a per pupil basis, and then the debt service fund on a countywide basis based on your percentage of the total debt service levy. We don't get that reported. School district's the only taxing entity in the state of Missouri who does not get that information, but it does count towards your bonding capacity. We cannot compel utility companies to answer that question for us. All we can do is be persistent. So we're in the process of doing that. We haven't had a ton of responses yet, but we're going to look at that to try to maximize your bonding capacity should you want to do a bond issue up to your bonding capacity in this calendar year. Having said that, so $9 to $10 million in all likelihood, even though that's a ton of money, it's a ton of money to individuals. That's not going to address all the facility needs that you're going to see, probably not even close. So again, as we look at projecting out, the vast majority of what we do is try to help you plan long range with realistic assumptions moving forward. So for you all, 90% or more, and if you have questions during this, please stop me and ask me. I don't want to just be talking to you. But 90% of your revenue is going to be coming from your local assessed value in terms of your debt service, that levy that you assess on your local taxes. You get some of that additional state assessed road and utility property revenue that we call. You earn some interest, you'll get a few other things. But so the biggest thing that we do is try to accurately project out what your assessed value is going to be. Because we don't want to get you in big trouble and have you paying off a bunch of debt that you can't get back. But we also don't want to leave money on the table for you and say, be overly conservative. So right now, what we've done, we have a nice kind of window look back from a historical perspective. If we look, we've got 2 bond issues built in to our modeling just to show you what that might be. That's a $9 million issue this year, and then a $7 million issue 5 years from now in 2029. So you'd be 2024, 2029, somewhere in that $16 million range. And that is going to allow you to pay back, or those issues will be paid back, and you will actually continue to run surpluses in your debt service fund at a projected growth rate of 2.75%. You say, why are you, what a weird random number. Well, that's 25 years worth of issuance. The longest we can go out and issue debt in Missouri is 20 years on general obligation debt. So if we're going to do 2 issues over 5 years, that last issue would take you out 25 years from today's date. If we look at what we've projected in growth over that 25 years, it's equal to the growth you've had in just the last 20. So we are being more conservative in the last 20 years on your growth, which includes the Great Recession, a once in a generation, once in 100-year sort of economic recessionary event. So we think that planning for slower growth over a 25-year period than over the previous 20 is more than safe. That doesn't mean that we think a bunch of growth is going to come into your community. If you think that the university or anything like that is driving additional growth and development, you can direct us to increase those assumptions. But absent you telling us, hey, Southern Boone, we have like 10% growth built in over the next 5 years or something insane annually. But that's because they're finally developing there along 63. They take the south side of the airport in. Potterfield, the guy that Small Arms Munitions individual owns, whatever it is, 500 acres up there, and he's developing, I mean, so we can be convinced to grow that growth rate. But what we're really trying to do is just take into account the time value of money. Over time, money gets less valuable. The dollar gets less valuable. So your property values go up, not because you've done anything to make those values appreciate, but simply because the dollar gets less valuable over time. So we pick a number that is just meant to essentially mimic inflation over time, inflationary pressures on the dollar. We're not looking to try to say you're going to grow 10%, say you're going to be running bond issues every 3 years at $10 million. We want to be realistic. But after that 5-year period, then you would be set up like what we talked about, of that every 5 to 7 years, you would be something in that $6 to $8 million range is where how we think you would recoup bonding capacity over time. So that over the next 10 to 12 years, you could be doing something in the range of $22 to $25 million worth of improvements. One of the ways that phasing in helps you over time is, number one, it helps you go through that exercise of prioritizing, but it also helps with that long range plan in terms of your maintenance and everything that's going on there. If we can use debt service fund dollars to get deferred maintenance and preventative maintenance work done, that is like a shot in the arm to your operations, right? Because then you're not looking to try to get that done on your operations. Now, do we want to go out and do all your roofing, HVAC, and we want to renew all your systems in one bond issue and have them then run out of warranty exactly 20 years from now? No, we don't want to do that. But if we can help you get along and give you some of those shots in the arm operationally, we want to do that. And we want to provide you the flexibility to move in the future. One of the things you can do is move revenue. You can reallocate revenue within your tax levy. Now, some of those require votes of the people, but if you would need to move some of that over, you can do that as well. So this is designed to not burn you out or cap you out for 20 years or anything like that. We want to get you on a nice steady state so that you can go back and address those facilities and put together a long range plan. That's a lot of material, but those are the things that Dr. James and I have been working on, or our team, not me. And we're trying to make sure that we're fitting everything into what you're looking to do so that as you start to grow that plan and devise that plan, you can have the next 10 to 12 years hopefully taken care of. And then that can be a living and breathing document, right? We can update it every year as assessed value numbers come in, as we get more real data, as we see how you collected, all that good stuff. But I don't know if you've got any questions or you want me to take it any other directions, but I wanted to make sure that I was Putting you to sleep tonight, basically.
I appreciate it. I wanted you guys to know what conversations I was having as just looking at what the 38,000 takes. It's about 27 cents of our taxing capacity. As those things are intersecting, like Joe said, we're really going to, in order to do what we want to do as a group, we will not be able to do it solely through bonding. And so what Joe and Steve will offer is some financial guidance and guidance just along the way to make sure your operating side and your cash flow is where it needs to be, because we're not going to be able to lean on our debt service only to do the types of things that we're looking at. So just want to bring in the very best to have that conversation so that we're in the best possible position we can be in.
And that's well stated. We know how important local revenue is now and how much more important it could be just because of the restrictions that our state legislature has on what they can do to provide additional revenue. So we want to make sure we're right sizing that. We understand the idea of a no tax rate increase bond issue kind of gets people used to this. We can do everything we need to do without ever increasing taxes. So we always want to start from that baseline because we know that's what our patrons are used to. And then, you know, if we can't get there for you, then you have the process and the communication and transparency to go out then and be able to communicate that to your public and see what they think and feel about that. But we want to make sure, first of all, that you're in the best condition with the levy that you have, and we're right sizing those revenues for you.
Thank you.
Questions do we have? There's a lot there. What are rates running right now?
You know, we were in the market today with a shorter deal that was in the low 4s, high 3s. You'd be more in the 4.5% or 5% range right now, which is pretty standard for historically where we had been before the Great Recession, where we've been in this super low interest rate environment for a long time. But the assumptions that we make for any future interest rates are 5%. We're assuming growth is at 2.75%. So, you know, there's a lot of argument to be said that we're being far too conservative there, because you would never want to be borrowing money. If you were borrowing money at almost twice the rate that you were recouping, you know, what we want to do is borrow money and then grow out of that problem, right? So we try to be conservative, but we've assumed 5% rates, which are above historical norms. We would expect 4.5% unless, you know, some sort of runaway inflation comes after us.
I'll ask you an impossible question. Would you recommend we drag our feet and wait for a lower rate later next year, or should we be fast tracking this?
This Joe Kinder's personal opinion, and remember that I only make money if you guys issue bonds. So wait for me to leave the room before you have an open discussion about this. But your debt service levy can afford the interest rates that are out there now, and construction is never cheaper than it is today. So if rates go down, we do have a period of time where we will actually lock you out of being able to refinance. That is targeted to get you the lowest rates, because we have no guarantee that rates are going to go lower tomorrow. But our job is to find investors who want to buy and hold your investment. So if they're buying it and immediately trading it for a profit, that means we've messed up and not gotten the lowest rates. So one of the things we do is we guarantee a return on that investment over time. Industry standard nowadays is between 7 and 10 years, but you would have the ability to go back in and refinance that if rates did drop. Even then, we've got some mechanisms and methods to do that.
How many years before we could typically refinance?
It's going to work 3 to 5 years, something like that. So, but we do, that dot plot that you see on the Fed. I don't know if you see it. I mean, there's two different approaches. Dr. James has also been talking to another expert, Jason Hoffman, I know you've been working with him on some budget stuff, who's from Jeff City. And their economists with their group say that rates are going to start dropping as soon as this summer. Our economist, who can be controversial from time to time, does not think that's going to happen until January of 25 before rates for school districts start dropping to borrow. Having said that, we've had almost a 0.5% rally over the last 3 weeks in our market, and that means 0.5% lower rates. So we've seen some dropping rates. We'll see what happens. Our economists are saying that's because there's not been enough issuance and they need to put their money to work, and they've had their money sitting in cash. And so now we've got this overbearance of demand that's driving that price then up for them, down for you all. But we'll see how long that maintains. But I do think that our Fed has gotten people used to borrowing money at low interest rates, and their raising interest rates are starting to get the result they want, which is to seize up that market, make people stop borrowing so that the supply chain can catch up and the residential real estate market can catch up, and we can get the homes available. We have no inventory for homes. And so they're getting close. I mean, they are getting close to achieving their goal, and then they can start bringing that back down to get us back to what we're used to from our perspective. So I do see that coming, and if you do borrow in 2024, there's a chance that a year later rates are significantly lower. But I do think your debt service can handle it. And, you know, if you can get those construction costs done in today's dollars, that's all better.
Mhm.
And again, I'm telling you to do something that's gonna make me money, so big
Sure.
surprise. Take it with a grain of salt.
Something that I was considering also in trying to be this cautious going in and getting the best advice that I can give. I didn't realize this, but Cliff and I discovered when we built Thurman Willett, there was actually supposed to be an additional building. It dropped off over time because our eyes were bigger than our stomach. Same thing happened with our high school. Same thing happened with our elementary. I would like to underpromise and overdeliver and to put us in the best possible spot. I'm really trying to dust all the corners that I can to make sure that there's nothing hiding that would put us in a predicament where we can't follow through with whatever we decide to do. Thanks, Joe. I appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah.
Very informative. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good to see you. I'll see you again soon, I'm sure. Thank you.
Okay.
I think I would like to acknowledge that those were Joe's minutes on the clock, but but I'm done with my report. Thanks.
All right.
I really
Very
appreciate
good.
it.
It looks like it must be time to approve the candidate filing period.
Simply put, our filing period, we're recommending December 5th to December 26th. That last day of filing period, I would be here on campus at the board office. We'll be doing that during normal business hours through that time period for anyone that's interested. We will have 2 positions that are opening a part of the next election, unless
Nobody files
unless nobody files and we refile.
unless those candidates file.
Exactly.
Okay, got it. Which I guess technically that would mean they filed, so. Mark and Hannah. All right. So that looks like an action item.
Yeah.
So I need somebody to make a motion to approve the candidate filing period as presented.
I move we approve the candidate filing period as presented.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Other than say, are you sure you want to be here on the 26th?
It's
I mean,
okay.
can we move it up a week or something so you don't have to do that? or no?
I don't think that we can, because
Okay.
then we go into November. It's just the way, it's not a big deal. It's the day after. I'll come up here, catch up on emails, shoot some baskets in the gym
Does
next.
it have to end in a certain time period?
Yeah.
Go.
Has to start on a Tuesday and end on a Tuesday. And so you're really kind of, I think we're vapor locked this year with it being the
Okay.
5th and 26th.
All right, very good. Yep, need a vote. So all in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed the same? All right. Motion passes. Here we go. 7 discussion items. That's PPLA.
Christine Miller cannot be here this evening, but she thank you for the report, so you guys can
You're
read
right.
that. If you have questions, let us know.
All right, perfect. Anybody have any questions on the report? Comments? Okay. FFA?
So we were informed to keep it short because there are 7 items on the reports on the board. So we wanted just to show you a highlight. So we sent you, or we sent Chelsea, the kind of the overview of what we've been doing over the past year. Big thing is we have 100 members this year. That's down a few this year due to having smaller grade levels in the seniors and junior classes. This year I picked up 2 very large freshman classes, so we're hoping for increase as well as retaining some 8th graders coming in as freshmen. Anything on that, Mr. Shepherd?
No, I think we're doing fine there.
Yeah,
It's pretty normal to me. I mean, I think, we're always up or down a little bit.
Also some accomplishments we've just gone over, and our kids are pushing us to do more accomplishment stuff, so filling out more applications. They're coming and asking us to fill out grant opportunities. So proficiency award winners, we've had state maxing out on state degrees and American degrees over the past 2 years.
5 people received in the last 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. Yep, that was really cool. Like 4 of them actually attended.
Yep.
We had some outstanding freshmen last year. We had 2 students selected to be the top 75. Reed Baker and Carly Frank to attend Timex Academy. We were being active on the state level with state chorus, contest teams. We have kids competing at the state fair this year. There's been a big push for our kids, or we haven't been pushing our kids are pushing themselves to do more showing during the summer, as doing some county fairs around here. State fair, we had 4 members actually compete in competitions at the state fair with bacons and with breeding sheep. Some strengths, again, we have our state ranking contest teams that we've been having.
So we recently went to National FFA Convention, 2 weeks ago. We went with Cuba and we went with, piano. We took 54 kids. We took 20 personally. We had a good time. Kids with lots of good leadership sessions, and I think most of them said they have a good time doing it. We also, it's not in the report, we had our booster club puts on a labor auction every year, so we had that the 15th of October, and we raised almost $10,000. Booster club did, so that helps us pay for some trips and things throughout the year. So that was good. We did our Food for America out here at the elementary during Grandparents' Day. That went really well. I thought it always seems to go well. One thing that I just want to mention too, because it's a great partnership, is I'm building sheds again. I'm building 5 sheds, classic buildings, gives us all the materials just across the road, and we don't have to pay for anything, and they let us keep 1 shed a year, and we do whatever we want to with, and we give them back to them. And most of those sheds, a lot of those sheds actually donate to around the community and things. So that's pretty cool. I mean, I've been doing it like 12 or 13 years with them, and Kenneth Miller is a great guy. And I would say we'd probably donate at least over $100,000 to that. So that's pretty awesome in my opinion. And then Miss Nearhelm went to Washington DC. She took 4 kids or 5, what was it? 3 kids to Washington DC this year. We're gonna go again this year. Well, usually on the DC thing she didn't mention is we try to go every other year, but because of COVID, it kind of got all messed up. So we've gone 3 years in a row. And
then next year will be our skip year.
This next year should be our skip year. Because it does cost me a couple $1,000s a kid. So it takes time to deal with that. So any questions?
How does your, you talk about 26% of the ag students are dues paying FFA members, and I know that it's always a challenge for you guys to get them to pay the dues because you can't make them, but you want them to. But how does that compare to other schools? And
that's a great question. I would say that's pretty normal. I don't know. What do you think? I mean, I've never really, just with other schools, I mean, yeah, that's normal. It's rough. Because to be honest with you, those 26% of students, when they don't pay their FFA dues, it's really tough to get them to be involved, and it kind of sometimes it drags the other kids down, because the kids that aren't, when you say, hey, why don't you guys pay your dues? Well, I'm not paying mine. They're always the first one to say something in class. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of rough, but I would say that's pretty normal. And there is something coming down from nationals, I think soon. We've talked about it in some of our ag teacher meetings where we don't have to pay individual dues anymore. We're hoping this works out.
I'm hoping I think it's a great deal for us.
It's where we actually pay by the size. It's a flat rate. It's by the size of our, how is it?
program.
It was our group of our school. Yes, the population of our school, so we pay a flat rate. So
That would make more sense.
Yeah, and I tell kids all the time, even though you're not paid your dues, you really are an FFA because it's intracurricular, if that makes sense.
You just didn't get to do the fun stuff, is what a lot of other kids tell each other.
Pretty much, yeah.
And it holds back some of those kids from activities that would benefit them, whether they realize it or not.
I can say that number, that percentage has dropped over the past, week since I've done the report, actually. I've had kids coming in since it's FFA, like we went bowling yesterday. If they don't have their dues paid, they could not get on that bus.
Yes.
So kids are like, well, I wanna go bowling, or I wanna participate in this next week, and we're like, we have to be a member, and they're like, okay, well, we'll just pay the $30 and we'll go do that. So I'd say I probably had another 10-15 kids pay last week, so that has increased.
I was curious too, like for the kids not paying, is it because they don't have the finance to do it, or is it because
They just
they're
don't
like,
want
need
to.
to tell their parents?
Yeah, I think it's a perception that, okay, we don't want to join FFA because we don't do all that other stuff, so they have the other kids do, and we'll always tell them like, well, she'll go whip you. You only get out when you put in, is what it is. You know, that's what I tell them. Like, even if you don't pay your dues, you're still, I don't know, it's hard to explain. Could you explain it better?
I explained to the kids as, you can put in as much as you want, but you will only receive as much out of this organization as you put in.
Yeah.
So, you will get benefits, reap the benefits if you participate, but if you don't want to be an active member, you're not gonna reap the same benefits as the kids who are putting in the extra effort, going to extra contest teams, doing their SAU projects, making sure the record books are top notch, to be able to fill out those applications and get these grant opportunities.
And to answer about can they afford it, I talk to kids all the time. Every time I talk about dues, and we do it for a solid month or two. If you can't pay your dues, talk to us here. I've never let a kid that couldn't pay their dues not be an FFA. Does that make sense?
And we
I
have
mean, we
had
figured it out
this year.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because I'm speaking from my own personal experience, but
Yes.
my own child said he held on to our check in his locker for a long time. And
Yes.
so I'm just going.
Trust me, I know.
Are there other ways we could be requesting these payments from parents, like some kind of electric payment?
Oh, I would love.
Easy if since you've been Mo,
I would love it.
and you wouldn't have been waiting on it for a month.
No. Yeah, oh, trust me, every day, did you bring your check today?
I think
Oh,
it's like,
no.
can you swipe my card? I'm like,
Mm.
I don't
Yes.
have anywhere to swipe your card.
You know, so I would love something like that, that'd be great, you know.
But I think that falls down to
I
kind
wish,
of
is that something, I
something.
know on the portal, like you can pay lunch money on there. I wish there was ways you could put the money in there and say, this is for class
Activity fee.
dues,
Yeah.
this is for
Me too,
That'd be
dues.
nice.
I wish there was.
I
because
hate collecting money.
Yeah.
It's always an iffy situation, sending a check with a child to
Yes.
school, cause I know.
I write receipts for everything I get, but
I-
then I got, I get kids, especially the first month, I got my FA dues, and so I'm sitting there 10 minutes writing receipts. You know,
Yeah, I wish there was a way we could do that.
I do too, that would
There
be
is,
awesome.
there's just a cost associated with it, so I'll come up with what the cost is.
Well, I mean, I know, there's a cost when you pay for lunch money, you pay a certain percentage because it's on a credit card, but
Yeah, it'd be 3 or 4% or whatever.
Yeah.
it is.
I'd still pay it.
I would pay
It's
it.
a convenience, it's a convenience fee.
Well, then you can text out parents saying, hey, dues are ready and pay it online or something.
Yes.
I do want you guys to know that this is partly a philosophical matter. Obligating a student to pay a fee in order to participate in a state curriculum is not something that I've ever been in a district where we were comfortable doing. Like it would be similar to going to math class and saying, well, you have to join Mensa if you want to be in a math class. Obviously, that's an exaggeration. So we want to be careful with requiring the participation in an ancillary program to just access the general curriculum. Because without that, now the kid doesn't have the benefit of the general curriculum either, if they just choose in particular not to participate in the ancillary association or club or whatever it might be. So just something to consider. Of course, the more they do, the better, and that goes with FFA. But an ag class versus no ag class at all with the FFA is just something to consider.
Okay.
Thanks. Didn't mean to send us
No,
down a rabbit hole.
I appreciate your question, Mark, because it's
Thank
a,
Mark.
it's a hard question to answer. trust me.
Those additional minutes were on Mr. Pender as well. With everything on, you'll be good at the accounting part of that.
Well, thank you very much. Gifted program.
Hello. My name is Alicia Trusser and I teach the gifted classes. So I just wanted to go over some of the main points from our report this year. Program currently has 46 students that have been identified as gifted. And then it shows here the grade level breakdown for the elementary, middle and high school grades. And state approved gift programs require a minimum of 150 minutes per week of direct instructional time, and our classes are divided into 2 different times for the kids. We have classes grouped with grade levels that are 90 minutes, and then I have a class with all of the gifted students all at once for 60 minutes. Then there's a schedule shown there for you. During the grade level class meeting times, the kids leave their regular classroom. Then those times are used mostly for in-depth topic-based projects, bigger projects that we go farther in detail with learning and everything that we do. The all group class time, though, we use that more for the SEL curriculum. For extended thinking strategies and other different activities like that, as well as just working on things that will help meet the effective needs of the students. The screening process remains the same as it has been, and it has the 2 stages of screening and further evaluation. So our district's criteria is the same as that's outlined by DESE in DESE Gifted Education Program Guidelines that I provided a link for. And those students must meet criteria requirements in 3 or 4 areas. Those areas are general mental ability, academic ability, creativity, reasoning, and problem solving, and then also an area of other. I'm still keeping files on all the students and using all the same forms I've been in the past, with data collection forms and different types of things that help me keep track of screening and doing all the screening process, and students that have been tested, and then the ones that are accepted in the program. And one thing that I've been working on some this year is the Missouri Gifted Education Self-Assessment Tool. And that basically has a list of several things that this district needs to be doing each year to be meeting the state guidelines and to remain a state through the program. So we've been trying to work through that a little bit, and I've also been continuing on developing the program curriculum. Some of the new topics that we've been covering this year so far are simple machines, molecular gastronomy and food science, solar cooking, and robotics. Then Scamper thinking strategies is another thinking strategy process that I've been working with the kids on. It's a little bit different than the engineering design process, but they go kind of hand in hand. So I've been working on that some. And then I still provide support to teachers as needed. Then I also had the opportunity recently to observe a gifted teacher at the middle school level in the Owensville School District. And I got a lot of just kind of information from her on like some insights into her, what she teaches, her ideas of curriculum, the format of the program, as well as different teaching resources. And other than that, I'm just been trying to network more with gifted teachers in the area, in the state. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions?
Okay,
Do
thank you.
we have an opinion on I just remember this from a few years ago, the 4-day school week? Do you think it still has or do you think, maybe I shouldn't say still, has a negative impact on the number of kids participating in gifted? So as I look at this on Friday, if you're in gifted, you're gonna spend, what, 2.5 hours if you're in grades 4 and 5 with you, versus being in their regular classes. Do you see that being a problem or not?
Do you mean in terms of like student participation?
Participation
like
and
the
the amount of the regular class time they're missing out on.
I'm not sure. I mean, going into this year, that's something I don't necessarily have information on. Like I've sent out a few surveys to parents of students in the program, but that wasn't one of the questions. Yeah. So maybe that's something, if I do another survey, I can add that onto there. But I know there is concern for students missing at that grade level. To be honest, the thing that kids don't want to miss is recess. And they want to leave for, their 20 minutes to go have recess and come back. But sure, like in terms of the 4-day school week, I've been in touch with the state each year just to make sure that's still what we need to provide, even if we're a 4-day week, as opposed to 5-day weeks, and it's still the same.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know for sure if that's causing students to not participate in the program. So
Wonder if we have the ability to look back, say 5 years, and look at how many were eligible versus how many participated versus now how many are eligible. versus how many
We could look-
participated.
I
Wonder
bet
if
we
we could
could
figure
look
that
at
out.
our program.
I'd be curious. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Building code policy.
You saw my notes regarding building code policy, because there is no local entity to guide what our building codes are. So look at city, then county, then state, because we don't have a city code or a county code that's covering us as we go on to our bonding and construction. That means we default to the state, which has currently recommended the 2018 IBC building codes.
But that's not technically adopted.
Right, it is not, it's only recommended, which means that should we move forward with our building codes, we have some flex, or move forward with our building construction. We have some flexibility on what IBC codes we could adopt. Now, I think I outlined this a little bit in my summary explanation, but the newer code that you go get doesn't necessarily mean that there's increased safety. Sometimes it's just, in this case, for instance, FEMA has some requirements for storm sheltering and some other codes that may not necessarily apply to best practices and our upcoming projects. Having said that, with our flexibility to adopt any range of codes as the lowest level entity, are we interested in taking a look and comparing the IBC recommendations for, my understanding is that many schools who choose us do the 2012 IBC codes, which are pre a lot of tedious FEMA regulations. Are we interested in seeing that? And then I'll bring back a recommended code along with an analysis and the difference between them, and then adopting one at this level as the district entity as our code moving forward in terms of running an upcoming bond or project.
Well, I probably have the strongest opinion on this, so maybe I'll start the discussion. So if we go to the new code, the architects will require us to, as the code requires a certain percentage, and it will not just look at if we're just putting junior high in that building, they're gonna look at our entire student population. They're gonna say whatever the number is, 5 square foot per student for a FEMA storm shelter. FEMA storm shelter, I think, is gonna cost us about another $100 per square foot. So it'll add $1 million, it'll add an easy $1 million to our building project, should you adopt it. If you look at the field house, and anybody that's been in the field house basement knows, while it's not technically a FEMA storm shelter, because you have to have special doors and an engineer would have had to design it for a storm shelter. Anybody that's been in there knows, I shouldn't say knows, I would feel very comfortable being in the basement of the field house during a tornado. So I personally don't think we should spend the taxpayer money to duplicate what, for all practical intents and purposes, we already have. And other school districts that are in kind of the same boat as we have gone back and adopted that 2012 building code to keep from spending the extra money for something again that I feel pretty strongly that we already have in place.
I wish I would have said it that way to start. That frames it very well. I just don't think that I don't think it would be in our best interest to spend the money in that way if we have a choice when we have comparable alternatives. We've got to make the most out of every dollar, and duplication doesn't seem to be the best route. So by taking a look, and I'm kind of thinking that I'll be focused on 2012 and then offering the pros and cons alternatives. I'm gonna look what everybody else is doing. The 2012 seems to be the reigning champion as far as selections. And then present that as our building code that we're adopting.
Questions?
I think you're valid points. And I think we need to do whatever maximizes our dollar.
Any concerns? Okay, so you'll bring that back next month and we'll formally adopt it.
Absolutely.
Very good. That didn't take long. All right, athletic report.
Didn't do this justice earlier. We had quite a few fall sports wrap up, including volleyball. Middle schools did pretty well with the A team going 7-7 and B team 4-1. Worked on fundamental skills a lot. Mr. Minix is doing supervision this evening, or he would be delivering this. Great season, a lot of growth on and off. High school basketball, a lot of good sportsmanship, a lot of honorable mentions. Our JV tournament was twice as big this year, had a lot of return tournament championships and some big wins.
High school volleyball, right?
Yes.
Said basketball.
Oh, did I say basketball?
Fine.
Already had basketball in the month.
Yep.
Quite a few district and conference. We had 4 different students: Harley Cleveland, Vivian Baker, Saley Schaefer, and Nicole Grellner, with district and conference mentions. Of course, women's softball, we had a great year, went 23-8 with 18 athletes. Had a really good culture, like I mentioned earlier. We were down, I don't know, 3 or 4 games, 5, 6, 8 points. And those girls really battled back. Very young team. I'm excited about what they're going to do the next couple of years. We had 9 conference, district, and regional honors, including Kinsey Hackman, Ellie Dudenheffer, Sophia Voss, Ava Warren, Kylie Peters, Hannah Hackman, Kiana Hostetler, Caitlin Starkey, and Emma Monette. Really great year for softball. I think you're going to like it even better next year. Sophie Voss was doing our student presentation earlier. I don't know how they got such a big beast in that little tiny package, but she carried us through the playoffs. She just did an amazing job. Football, we had a really good second JV season. We beat some really established programs this year. In my opinion, and I think Coach Minix would agree with this, we're in a very young program, but a very thorough and concerted effort has went into propping this program up and getting it started. And I think it's obvious with some big wins over some schools that have had football for years and years and years. Went 8-2 in that final year, had a good banquet the other night. Next year we'll be looking for the first year varsity, and our players are definitely ready. Cross country, had 2 of our athletes compete at state, Reagan Kluzak and Ramsey Chapler. We'll be focusing on working on the next season already, and then recruiting there, trying to get more kids involved in a great program. But Ms. Baker's done a great job there as well. But then now we get to talk about basketball this season, which is going to be fun for everybody. Middle school boys and girls each have 11 participants, high school boys at 16 and high school girls at 19. Looking forward to a little bit of inside time in the dome this winter.
Any comments or questions?
It's good to see that there seems to be an increase in participation in some of these sports, which is good.
As we pointed out at FFA, the more kids we can get involved in,
Yes.
even just the smallest ways, the better.
It was fun over the course of the softball season. And I can't say that I've been to more than a handful of softball games, but towards the end, went to everyone, and it was fun to watch the crowds grow every game. And football was the same way. It was fun to watch our crowds go from being very, very quiet to starting to especially the students starting to understand how you cheer on the team. And I think that's going to, actually, I saw that in basketball last year, but it's kind of fun to watch the energy start to grow.
Yeah, winning is fun. And I think we're competitive and winning in some key spots, and that's fun for kids. It's fun for the crowd. And I think it's good for us. I mean, no one would argue the in opposition to that, but I think we've won fairly big in some really key places. Looking forward to carrying that through basketball, both our girls and our boys team. I think they're gonna be fun.
Very good. All right. Help loan payment schedule.
So I shared the amortization schedule with you guys. What I wanted to make sure and highlight is with looking at our track, it definitely needs a resurface. It's dried out, it's thin, and we had it repaired and, at least ready for competition this year, but by no means in good shape. And you can already tell there are holes and it needs patched again. We're gonna have to resurface. We're on year 14 going on 15 with that track surface, and you generally get 10, maybe 12 years out of it. I would like to say it is less than ideal to go with a lease purchase to do this. However, I am definitely taking a look at if we go with bonding, it could be a year or two before we're able to do that. We could pay another 15 to 30,000 in patches and repairs to kind of get us through. But in the end, I think like Mr. Kinder said earlier, the cheapest now time to build is now. Having said that, the estimates that we've given old estimates that's around that high 2s, low 3s mark. But when our estimates are coming in, part of our issue is actually the south and west corner is significantly below the north and east corner. And we have some subsoil shifting that's happening as a matter of drainage, which is causing our track to kind of undulate as you go down the stretches. So we have had estimates as high as 800,000 if we really wanted to fix that and repair it. I think the resurface is going to fall in that $300,000 range, and we're going to have to throw some change, not necessarily lifting up the whole edge of the track, but fixing that substrate and undulation. So it'll be, you don't put a water level on it, but it'll be great for competition and it'll look good for another 10 years. Between that and some lighting and fixing the leaning tower of fence that we have, we should be able to handle that with the 500. The caution is that at an annual payment in the $56,000 range, everything we do to encumber the future AV growth means that we have less flexibility each year as we go into budget. And so I don't believe we have a choice but to do something sooner than later, and it will never be cheaper than right now. But I'd be lying if I didn't say that in our discussion about budget for next year, once we sign the papers and get the ink dry on this, just have less flexibility in my focus. In order for us to stay in the hunt with teacher wages and benefits, we really need to focus on having as much flexibility as we can. It limits us, but I don't know that we have a lot of great options.
So remind me, if a year from now, when we go to bond for a building, can we roll this into it or not?
There are some things that we can do to do that, but I would defer to Mr. Kinder. The answer is yes, based on conversations with Jason Hoffman and a couple other folks. We can, should we say, you know what, we don't like this, we've got some bonding room, roll the purchase of the lease purchase into our bond if we have the room.
Which I think that is where I really like the solution, because if we get a year from now and the wheels fall off, we can make that choice to roll this into the bigger bond. Now I don't think we'll do that, but knowing we need to do all this work, we do have a parachute if we need it. Sure.
The reason that I would even look at a lease purchase is because like we mentioned earlier, we are limited by statute to borrow 15% of our assessed valuation, and our assessed valuation is about 84 million and some change, which puts us, I think, at about 12.6 million. But we owe a little bit of money, more than a little bit of money, for our elementary there. And so that limits what we can bond out. And so by moving this and taking that risk, although we could roll it back in with a parachute, I guess, in the bond, we free up about $500,000 of that. And so if we're in a good position when we go to bond, we can just roll that in. Are you in the same spot with that, Joe?
Yeah, the only note there is there are 4 things that you have to include in bond language if you plan to do it. Build anything new and freestanding, buy anything that wouldn't be considered a fixture, that's equipments like buses, loose technology, purchasing land, or then buying back lease land. So we would need to have a clause in your ballot language that would say, and purchase previously leased property of the district. That would be the option. So we would just need to know before you call that election, so we can have a ballot which properly reflect the intent. But anything you put in there, you're not required. Anything you leave out, though, you are not legally allowed to do of those. Any other repair, improvement, anything, even in addition, you can do just by our simple kind of language itself, of those four things.
Well, it seems like if we move forward then with doing the lease purchase, we would want to include that in our bond language regardless, just so we would have the option at some point, right?
We could do that.
That makes sense.
That's right. That would be our advice to you all. That would ultimately be up to you to think about how you like it. That would be our advice.
On the lease purchase language, I know we mentioned three things. I don't know that, and maybe it's not important. Can we use that money for, let's say, I know we had a football committee meeting last night. I think we probably got half the money raised for a press box. Can you use it for that, or do we need to change that language a little bit to other things as?
I would think we would have to change the verbiage in our application for lease purchase, because they did want to know what we would. Maybe if we went more general and said, stadium improvements or something like that, we might
That
be
would
able
be-
to. But I can make a call to find
Okay.
out.
Or get it to a point where we know that everything we're gonna do is cost way more than $500,000. Right, because we don't want money to be sitting on the table and then spend more on lights than we really should, just because we need to spend the money.
I had the same thought.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll find out.
So I have a few questions about the details. What is MOHEPA? Or I don't know if I'm saying that acronym right. And then is that rate then for this would be 2.39%?
I think is that annualized or monthly? I forget what the little, there's an asterisk next to it that says.
So they'll charge you an ongoing maintenance fee that will be in addition to that, but it won't be a big amount versus a normal borrowing. Once you would pay your costs up front and then you wouldn't have an ongoing maintenance fee. But MOHEPA is the Missouri Health and Education Facilities Authority. And this is a special limited grant dam they have for school districts. That is, as you can tell, well under the market rates, especially when you're talking about a lease like that, you do more, well up over 5%. So it's better than a 50% discount. It's a great program. It hasn't been around. I mean, it kind of went away there in 2013, 14, but I'm glad it's back, and it's a great program.
We actually used it on our last bond as well.
Okay.
It does sound like everybody, but I mean, I hadn't heard of it, but now if I've asked around, it sounds like everybody uses it.
No,
I don't think they have a broad scope. I think it's like only $5 million a year to loan out or something. And so it's not often available, but when it is, if you get access to that, that's a big deal.
Okay, so it's not a done deal that we would get this because it's a limited amount of money, or do we feel pretty good about it?
We just have to sign the paperwork.
Yeah.
I got the payment schedule, and I wanted to make sure and put that in front of you guys. You're not required to vote on it, but I wanted you to see it, because I think when I presented it, I said we'll be somewhere in the $55,000 annual payment range, pretty close at 56. Not my work, people smarter than I. But again, that's still a big number. And so I wanted to make sure and put that in front of you guys again before we sign the paperwork.
I think that that's an amazing rate and we should sign that paperwork immediately.
Yeah, I was kind of impressed by that.
Yeah, the only thing I can say is make sure our language doesn't preclude us from doing something else other than what's on that list.
Yep.
All right. Well, nothing else there? Tuition payment plans.
Last item, so we changed our tuition rate from $8,300, if you guys recall, to I call it 3+1, meaning 3,000 for the first student to transfer, and 1,000 each additional student. We have had people pay our tuition, but we've also asked since then, can they make payments? And so I wanted to have a discussion about how we felt about that. Just in talking with a couple districts, they do it differently. Some require it all at once. Some require 2 payments at semester. You could do as much as you pay a quarter at semester, or a quarter, 25% at quarter 1, 25% at quarter 2. Any preferences by the group, or would you like not to get into the finance business at all? There is an element where you're chasing folks to get their money, and it's a difficult discussion when they haven't paid, say, January 4th, and you're about to start school and their student is in a desk, and I don't know that I want to get. I don't know what, that I want to get into the evicting students business. But having said that, and speaking to a couple other superintendents, they tend to handle it fairly well, and the payment option is not that big of a deal to them. There's a grace period. They reach out, they speak with the family, they give them a buy date, and then if not, then they have to disenroll and re-enroll in their home district. Thoughts?
How many do we have?
That pay total kids? 2 in elementary. I think just the 2 in elementary that are currently paying. Having said that, something that has come up, I finally received a response from the assessor. We did an audit of our registration addresses, and we do have 4 families that live in the district but do not reside in the district. Combination. Some of them do not pay property taxes to Osage R2 at all. Some of them, I think it's 50-50, 2 do and 2 don't. So I will be sending out letters to those families that said, hey, here's a copy. Here is our district policy. Should you be interested? If I'm mistaken, if you could please bring me some paperwork that shows that you pay at a minimum. Based on our policy, if you want to transfer your student in based on the payment of property taxes versus residency, then you must pay property taxes equal to or greater than whatever our tuition is. So if they had 1 student and our tuition is $3,000 and they make $3,200 in R2 payments, then they wouldn't need to bring anything to us. If they made $2,900, then they would bring us a check for $100 for that 1 student and make the difference.
If anybody, I've had people ask me about what we lowered our tuition to, and with some interest in transferring to the district. Has anybody else had anyone talk to them?
I've had people ask me questions about it. I don't know that it was like super serious, more just curious.
I've had at least a handful of curious phone calls that just say, can you tell me about that? And, what does it entail? Which is part of the reason why I wanted to know if we were interested in taking payments for that, which is a process. Don't necessarily need to put that into policy per se, but again, it's a big deal. Could swing our district one way or another in terms of enrollment. So I want you guys to be involved.
And I asked you this earlier today, how much money follows that student?
Say again.
How much money follows that student?
Their ADA, which is generally around the state adequacy target. So if a student has about 90 or 95% attendance, we'll get about $6,000 with the student in that 90% attendance range. Add to that their tuition, about $9,000 for that 1 student, and $1,000 for each additional student. Now we get ADA for every additional student. So we still get that $6,000 even at the $1,000 rate, if that makes sense.
That was something I wasn't very clear on when we approved it. I mean, are we counting on the tuition to basically pay all the expenses with that students? And we're not, we're getting $6,000 per kid. So then the question, and I don't know that we really thought it through, but I've had enough people ask me, and now this people wanting to do payments makes me think, if we charged them $2,000 a student, would that be better for us if we get fewer students? And I know we kicked numbers around and then we just kind of threw it out. And Brett, you threw it out there 3,000 and we went with it.
So last time we talked about this, you were saying we had room for growth for more students, right? And that's still the same case, like that's not.
We do. We have not seen such an influx of students paying tuition that we're having to hire new teachers for that. Our class sizes are far below, especially what you would be used to, Mr. Phillips, are far below. So we can grow quite a bit before we actually have to. And when I say grow quite a bit, I mean general teaching staff. With students come in to the district in general, participating in the general curriculum, we've got room before our class sizes even become average.
So I'm thinking kind of like Sean, maybe we, instead of I would hate to see you guys having to track down people for payments, but I do know like some families, even those paying tuition, coming up with $3,000. I mean, that's quite a bit of money that they might need for taxes or something, but maybe instead of agreeing to payment plans, we look at lowering the tuition cost again.
We can handle that in terms of budget and staffing at this point. I don't have a crystal ball to know every kind of transfer that we'll get, but I can't anticipate anything that I would think would overwhelm us in the immediate future.
I think as far as payments, I would just, I wouldn't get, I don't want to tie up anyone work wise. But I think if you split it by semester, that would be fair. That would-
I'm perfectly good with some type of payment plan. I don't see that we're talking about it affecting 4 or 5 people a year here. We're not talking about, I don't see any reason we shouldn't work with people who do want to pay to come. And I think our tuition should be low, and that's why we made it lower. And I'm good with it being lower yet, and I don't.
We're required by
Increase, we're making money, make
exactly.
money off increased enrollment regardless.
Yeah.
So I
We're
mean,
required by law to set it one time a year, but there's no limit to how we can adjust that through the year. So should you have a different preference, you can easily put that into.
So basically for this year, since we already set our tuition, we would just need to look at allowing for the payment plan option.
No,
But then next
Say
year
you can change it again.
we can now.
Yeah, you're required to do it, to have it board approved once a year. But that doesn't mean that you can't change it anytime in the year after that. You could change it 3 times this year if you wanted to. Ideally, you don't want to do that. Something we would need to consider is we already have families paying at one rate. We would need to, I think the best thing to do is to give them the refund of the difference. Should we decide to lower it, I don't, that's not gonna break us necessarily.
Did you have a thought on what you want to lower it?
Why don't you invite them to come in and buy a house, move in?
That'd be great too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, other than that's a pretty significant commitment.
Although I do think actually somebody who's shown some interest has already bought a house and
Yeah.
literally started building it in the district.
I mean, I'd definitely be in favor of taking it to either 2,000, or if you did, it comes down to. Well, how many months, so there's an interesting thought, you'd have what, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. Basically 9 months a year where you're in session if you're gonna do monthly, or you do fall and spring, which is semester is probably the way you wanna do it. You don't
That's
wanna
the
do,
most common
you don't wanna do.
monthly.
So at that point, you might, $1,000 a semester,
2,000 for the year.
2,000 for the year.
And then stick to the what, 1,000 per extra child, or,
I'm okay with that, but
I mean, we're making money after kids, but family.
yeah, I mean, it's like.
We probably want it to be a mechanism to promote growth or at least allow for it, right? The option. I don't want I wouldn't like the tuition to be an impediment for someone to come here type of thing. That's why I'd like to see it low, more look at it that way.
And I think what we want to do is make sure that we don't have students that got removed from another school district that want to come here because it's free. So it needs to be high enough that we avoid that. And so then what is the lowest number that avoids somebody that got removed from another district and is looking for a home for behavior or any number of things?
We always reserve the right to deny a transfer
Oh, we do?
regardless of whether we can pay that. As a matter of fact, especially for something like long-term suspension or expulsion, we have a reciprocal agreement in Missouri. I don't know how else to describe it. In that if they were suspended, say 120 days somewhere else, and then actually lived in the district, and they only served 20 of those 120 days, they would need to serve 100 days of suspension when they come in to our district. It is intended to keep students from hopping around and getting suspended in one school.
I just assumed if they paid tuition, you had to take them. Okay.
I'll make a motion that we lower tuition to 2,000 per student, 1,000 per additional child moving forward. For this school year. And allow for payments for. And allow, oh, well, we don't need that to vote as a vote, right? That's more administrative, right?
It won't be in policy, that's administrative. We'll just give that as an option.
I guess the question is, once you, I mean, the 2,000, I mean, that's your. Do you, the second, now we're discussing, I guess, the second kid, do you lower that?
That's the 2,000 plus one.
One.
Yeah.
So the second.
2,000
You're saying like
per kid,
lower,
1,000
lower,
per
since
child.
we lowered the one, lower the other.
Yeah, I guess I don't care much, one way or the other. I mean, I wouldn't care if we did 2 plus 5.
At the numbers that we're currently looking at, I doubt it will make little to no difference, and we can always reevaluate.
Increase them if we need to.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't wanna. Go from 2,100 to 4,000 the next, but. And we don't have to take kids anyway, I mean, we get full, then we just quit taking them.
Right.
Yeah, they're already
We
here.
reserve the right to not
Yeah.
accept any kid. if we
Yeah,
don't want to.
exactly, I love that. I mean, I'm kind of like, let's do 2 plus 5 and get these kids in here.
Okay.
I mean,
And your,
Sure,
amend your,
we'll make a motion that we're tuition will be 2,000 for the first kid, 500 each additional kid.
I will second.
Further discussion. We're definitely being aggressive, I don't know what other districts do.
We're on the low side, but I think it's obvious to us and anybody else that we are trying to promote our school district and raise our enrollment and do more of what we've already done.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Both the same. Very good. Anything else we have to discuss? All right, the next regular meeting will be December 19th at 6:30. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to closed session.
I move we adjourn to closed session pursuant to RSMO 610.021 subsections 13. Relative to personally identifiable employment information, 3 personnel actions, 6 personally identifiable student information, 1 legal actions involving a public body and or privileged communications among that body and its representatives, attorneys.
I'll second.
All right, roll call vote. Mark.
Yes.
Lori.
Yes.
Naomi.
Yes.
Lonnie.
Yes.
Fred.
Yes.
Jamie.
Yes.
I'm a yes. We are adjourned to